Hi, I'm Courtney Walsh, 34 Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Friday night. Shady Side apartment. Travis Keller. The guy I lived with for 9 years, no ring, no marriage, threw a full-on freedom party. Speakers blasting, friends screaming, champagne popping. He handed me one suitcase, $50 cash, and literally pushed me out while everyone cheered. Finally single again, I got in the only thing still in my name. Grandma's old 2008 Honda Civic, and drove through freezing rain to my parents' house in Mount Lebanon. 2 a.m. I'm soaked, banging on the door. Dad Gerald Walsh cracks it open just enough to see me dripping on the porch. "You're a grown woman. You picked that life, now deal with it." Mom Diane stands behind him, arms crossed, silent. My sister Melanie leans in and spits. "This isn't a charity motel, Courtney." Door slams, deadbolt clicks. I stand there in the snow teeth, chattering, digging through my coat pocket for anything. My fingers hit a scratched silver debit card. Grandma Eleanor Nora Walsh slipped me 16 years ago with a tiny note tucked inside. "Only when you truly have no one else, love." I laughed through frozen tears, figuring maybe $20 left for a cheap room. Next morning, I slid that card into an ATM at the Fifth Third branch on McKnight Road. The teller looked at the screen, went ghost white, and said, "Miss Walsh, please step inside my office right now." I walked in. He turned the monitor toward me. I stopped breathing. "Have you ever been locked out by the people who are supposed to love you no matter what? Drop a comment and tell me I read every single one." Part 2. Drops tomorrow. You're not ready for what that card actually held. The windshield was a solid sheet of frost when I woke up, stiff and freezing, in the front seat of Grandma's old Civic parked behind the Walmart on McKnight Road. My phone showed 6:47 a.m. and 6% battery. I had 1 bar of service and one person left who might still answer. I called Mason. 26 years old, still lived in the basement at Mom and Dad's, worked part-time at a parts store in Cranberry Township. He picked up on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "Court, it's not even 7. I'm out of gas and I'm locked out. Can you come get me? Please." A long pause, then a sigh. "Fine. 20 minutes. He pulled up in his beat-up Silverado, took one look at me shivering in the same clothes from last night, and didn't ask questions. I climbed in, heater blasting, and pointed toward the Fifth Third branch on Babcock Boulevard, maybe 4 miles away. I didn't tell him why we were going to the bank. I just needed to see if Grandma's card still worked. Inside, the lobby smelled like burnt coffee and bleach. I walked straight to the counter and slid the scratched silver debit card across. The name on it read, Eleanor N. Walsh, Trust Access, Mr. Donovan, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a name tag that had seen better days, took the card. He swiped it once, frowned, swiped it again. His face drained of color so fast I thought he might faint. "Miss Walsh." His voice cracked. "Could you come with me, please?" He led me past the teller line to a small private office. Mason stayed in the waiting area, scrolling on his phone boot, stretched out like he had all day. The door didn't latch completely behind us. Mr. Donovan closed the blinds, sat down, and turned his monitor toward me. The balance read 78, 412, 719 plus 63, and climbing in real time from overnight dividends. I stared. My mouth went dry. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I felt it in my throat. He spoke slowly, like I was a child or someone about to bolt. "In 1997, your grandmother purchased 45,000 shares of Amazon.com at roughly $3 each, post-split adjusted. She placed the entire position into an irrevocable trust with you as the sole beneficiary upon reaching age 18. Interest, dividends, and all gains have compounded untouched for over 25 years. This debit card links to a liquidity account fed directly from the trust. It has never been used until today." I couldn't speak. I just kept staring at the number. Behind the half-closed door, Mason had stopped scrolling. He was standing now, phone lowered, ear angled toward the gap. I saw his reflection in the glass of a framed banking certificate on the wall. His eyes were wide mouth, slightly open. Mr. Donovan kept talking, voice low. No one else has access. Not your parents. Not any sibling. Pennsylvania law and the trust language are ironclad. The principal stays locked until you're 55, but the liquidity account refreshes monthly. You could withdraw up to $500,000 today without triggering any tax event or notification. Mason's hand moved slowly to his pocket. He pulled out his phone, thumbs flying across the screen. Then he slipped toward the restroom sign, head down, shoulders stiff. I finally found my voice. Can anyone else see this balance? Only with your written consent or a court order signed by you. The trust was structured that way on purpose. I nodded, numb. Mr. Donovan printed a single sheet, just the balance, no other details, and slid it into an envelope. Take this to any private wealth advisor you trust. And Miss Walsh? Be careful who you tell. I walked out on legs that didn't feel like mine. Mason was already gone. His truck wasn't in the lot. I stood in the cold envelope in my pocket, staring at the empty space where he'd been parked 10 minutes earlier. My little brother had just heard everything. I took an Uber straight from the bank parking lot to 1 Oxford Center downtown. Alexander Cohen's office sat on the 22nd floor, all glass and steel and quiet money. His assistant waved me right in. Cohen himself was maybe 60, salt and pepper beard, expensive suit, no tie. He shook my hand, motioned to the leather chair across from his desk, and didn't waste time on small talk. I pulled the trust file the moment Fifth Third flagged the first withdrawal attempt in 25 years, he said, sliding a thick folder toward me. Your grandmother was my client. She was airtight, Courtney. Irrevocable spendthrift provisions, no contest clause, the works. Pennsylvania courts have upheld it 3 separate times already. I swallowed. 3 times. He nodded once. Your parents filed petitions in 2002, 2008, and again in 2014, claiming Eleanor lacked capacity when she executed it. Every single judge threw the cases out within weeks. The medical records from UPMC Shadyside were overwhelming. Your grandmother was sharp until the day she died. My stomach turned. He kept going. After the last dismissal, your father tried one more angle, petitioning for guardianship over you, personally arguing you were financially immature. The judge laughed him out of court. I stared at the folder like it might bite me. Cohen leaned forward. Bottom line, nobody touches a penny without your signature. Not your parents, not any sibling, not a future spouse. The trust says so in capital letters. My phone started vibrating non-stop in my pocket. I pulled it out. 27 missed messages, all from Mason. Come home now. Mom and Dad need to talk to you. It's important. Please. Where are you? I looked up at Cohen. He raised an eyebrow. Everything okay? I think my family just found out. He exhaled through his nose. Then you should probably decide how much you want them to know. I left the office 20 minutes later, clutching a slim flash drive containing every court filing ever made against the trust. The elevator ride down felt like falling. By the time I reached Minute Lebanon, the porch light was on, and the front door stood cracked open, something that never happened in our house. I pushed it wider. Mom rushed me before I could step inside, arms around my neck, tears already soaking my shoulder. Oh, honey, we were so worried. Why didn't you call? Dad appeared behind her eyes, red-rimmed voice soft. We said awful things last night. We were scared and angry. Come in, sweetheart, please. Melanie stood at the foot of the stairs in yoga pants and perfect makeup, arms open like we were long-lost best friends. I feel terrible. Let's just put it behind us, okay? They steered me to the living room like I was made of glass. Fresh coffee on the table, my favorite blueberry muffins still warm. Mom kept touching my arm, my hair, like she needed proof I was real. Dad sat across from me, hands folded. Mason told us everything at the bank. Courtney, we had no idea Grandma Nora did something that big for you. Mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue. All these years we thought she'd spent everything on medical bills. We were wrong. Melanie scooted closer on the couch. We're family. We stick together no matter what. Right? Dad reached into a manila folder and produced a thick stack of papers bound in blue backing. He placed it gently in front of me. We had our attorney draft this today, he said, voice calm, almost tender. It's a limited power of attorney just for the financial accounts. You stay the owner 100%, but you let us help manage it. Investments, taxes, legal stuff. That kind of money is complicated, honey. You shouldn't carry it alone. Mom nodded eagerly. We only want to protect you. Melanie smiled, eyes shining. Think of it as teamwork. We'll set up family meetings, decide together where the money can do the most good. I flipped the cover page. The document was titled Irrevocable Assignment of Beneficial Interest and Appointment of Co-Trustee. Page after page of legalese that basically handed control to a new family board my father listed as chairman. My pulse hammered in my ears. I looked up. Dad's expression was pure concern. It's just paperwork, Court. You sign, we file it, and nobody ever has to worry again. Mom reached across and squeezed my hand. We love you. That's all this is, Melanie added in a whisper. We're so proud of you. The room smelled like coffee and blueberry and something rotten underneath. I closed the folder. Every alarm bell in my body was screaming. I walked out of Cohen's office with the folder under my arm and drove straight back to Mount Lebanon. The front door opened before I even turned the engine off. Mom waved me in like I was returning from war. That night we ate meatloaf and mashed potatoes at the dining table we hadn't used since Christmas 2003. Dad poured wine for everyone except Mason, who nursed a Coke and stared at his plate. Melanie kept refilling my glass and calling me sis every third sentence. The next morning, Mom made pancakes shaped like hearts. Dad showed me spreadsheets on his laptop, red ink everywhere, Walsh & Sons Construction bleeding cash since the 2020 shutdowns. Outstanding loans at PNC Bank totaled $4.8 million. Interest alone ate $30,000 a month. By lunchtime, Melanie was crying in the sunroom, telling me her mortgage on the house in Upper St. Clair was 2 payments behind. Her husband had threatened to walk if they lost it. We're drowning, Courtney. Grandma would want us to stay together. Every meal for 3 straight days followed the same script. They took turns, Dad with the business numbers, Mom with the guilt trips about Grandma Nora's memory, Melanie with the tears and the hugs. The blue-backed document sat on the coffee table like a centerpiece pen placed neatly on top. On the third night after dessert, Dad pushed it toward me again. Just sign, honey. We'll handle everything. You'll never have to worry. I set my fork down. I'm not signing. Silence hit the table like a slammed door. Dad's face darkened first. Veins stood out on his forehead. After everything we've done for you, Melanie's tears vanished. You're seriously going to let us lose the company? The house, you selfish little mom, cut in voice shrill. We raised you, clothed you, and now you'll watch us starve on the street. Dad slammed his palms so hard the wine glasses jumped. Fine. We'll see you in court. We'll prove you're incompetent to manage that kind of money, or that Grandma wasn't in her right mind when she wrote you in. Either way, the trust gets frozen until a judge decides. Melanie leaned across the table, eyes narrowed. Lawyers cost money, Courtney. You'll burn through millions before this is over. Is that what you want? Mom was sobbing now. Real or fake, I couldn't tell. How can you do this to your own mother? I stood up. The chair scraped loud against the hardwood. I'm done here. I walked out while they were still shouting. Dad followed me to the porch, yelling that blood is thicker than money, that I'd regret this when they were homeless. Melanie screamed from the doorway that I was dead to her. I got in the Civic and locked the doors. My phone buzzed nonstop the entire drive to the extended stay hotel on Green Tree Road. By the time I checked in, Melanie had posted in the family Facebook group 312 members, cousins, twice removed, old neighbors, everybody. The messages rolled in like a flood. Aunt Linda from Cleveland. Heard you came into money and won't help your parents. Shame on you. Cousin Derek. Ungrateful doesn't even cover it. Someone I hadn't spoken to since high school, Karma's coming girl. Unknown numbers started texting screenshots of the Facebook post with laughing emojis and the words, rich bitch, over and over. I turned the phone face down and stared at the hotel ceiling. 3 days of love bombing had flipped into pure venom the second I refused to hand over control. I blocked every family number I recognized and ordered room service fries I didn't eat. The war had officially started. The FedEx envelope landed on the desk of my extended stay suite like a brick. Alexander Cohen had overnighted it from One Oxford Center with a single post-it full release signed. Everything we were previously barred from showing you is now yours. I locked the door, killed the lights except one lamp, and tore the package open. Hundreds of pages spilled out court pleadings, billing records, correspondence, medical reports, even handwritten notes from 15 years ago. Every document carried the same header in bold in Re. Eleanor N. Walsh, Irrevocable Trust. The first bombshell was a call log dated the exact evening Mason fled the bank. 9:14 p.m., outgoing call from Gerald Walsh's cell to Berger and Klein, LLP. Duration 47 minutes. Billing entry, emergency consultation. Immediate reactivation of Walsh Trust contest. Client reports beneficiary has accessed funds. I felt the blood drain from my face. Next folder, 2002 Allegheny County Orphans Court. Gerald and Diane Walsh versus the estate of Eleanor N. Walsh. They claimed Grandma lacked testamentary capacity when she signed the trust. They attached a single affidavit from a doctor who had seen her once for a sprained wrist. The judge dismissed it in 4 pages and ordered my parents to pay the estate's legal fees. 2008 emergency petition for plenary guardianship over Courtney Walsh, age 18. Dad argued I was incapable of managing substantial assets due to immaturity and history of poor decision-making. He attached my community college withdrawal form as evidence. The judge wrote in the margin, disappointment in inheritance is not grounds for guardianship. Denied with prejudice. 2014. Another capacity challenge, this time with a paid psychiatrist who diagnosed Grandma with moderate cognitive impairment based on a 15-minute phone call. That same doctor surrendered his license 2 years later after the state board found he fabricated reports in 6 other inheritance cases. Motion denied, sanctions threatened. Then came the brand new filing, still warm from the printer. 4 days after my visit to Fifth Third, Dad wired $250,000 from the company's last equipment loan at Citizens Bank to Berger and Klein with memo line retainer. Walsh Family Trust Intervention Phase 2. 2 days later, another $300,000 went to Reed and Langford in Philadelphia, a white shoe firm that specializes in complex family wealth disputes. Their sealed emergency petition asked the court to freeze all trust distributions until a hearing could determine whether I was subject to coercion or undue influence, and whether family co-trustees should be appointed for the beneficiary's protection. Attached were draft declarations ready for signatures. Gerald Walsh swearing I had a documented pattern of financial dependence and emotional volatility. Diane Walsh claiming I once threatened to run away at 16 because they wouldn't buy me a car. Melanie Walsh Baker ready to testify I was incapable of living independently without significant third-party support, citing my 9-year relationship with Travis as proof of poor judgment. They even had a court-ordered psychological evaluation lined up with an examiner they'd already paid. I flipped to the banking records. The $550,000 in legal fees came from the final construction loan secured by every remaining excavator, bulldozer, and dump truck the company owned. Dad had mortgaged the machines that built half the bridges in Allegheny County just to try to steal what Grandma left me. I spread the pages across the carpet like a crime scene map. 15 years. 15 years of lawsuits while Grandma was alive. More when I turned 18. More when she died. And the moment Mason told them the real number, Dad burned the company's last lifeline to hire the most expensive sharks in Pennsylvania. I opened my MacBook, created a new encrypted drive, and started scanning. Page after page after page. Every lie, every forged signature, every dollar they spent trying to take what was never theirs. My hands shook so badly the first 10 scans were crooked. I had to start over. When I finished, the clock read 4:07 a.m. I sat on the floor surrounded by paper and rage. They never saw me as a daughter, a sister, a granddaughter. They saw me as a vault they hadn't managed to crack yet. I closed the laptop. The next package I mailed wouldn't go to a law firm. It would go to people who wear windbreakers with yellow letters on the back. And it would be anonymous. I never slept more than 3 hours at a stretch after the night I finished scanning the files. Every scan, every highlighted invoice, every wire transfer lived behind my eyes when I closed them. I built the whistleblower package the way a bomb tech builds something that has to go off exactly once and never be traced. I hired the Cleveland accountant under an LLC registered in Delaware, paid him in cashier's checks mailed from 3 different cities. He produced a 180-page forensic report with appendices that looked like a graduate thesis. Shell companies registered to cousins who had never swung a hammer change order fraud on PennDOT jobs cash deposits within 48 hours of every fake progress payment, and a beautiful spiderweb showing how the dirty money came back clean through equipment leases that never existed. I added the full history of the trust attacks, every dismissed petition, every sanction threat, every dollar Dad bled from the company to fight Grandma's dying wish. When the final drive was encrypted with a 256-character passphrase I memorized and then burned, I drove to the south side at 2:43 a.m., parked 2 blocks from the federal building, and dropped 2 identical padded mailers into the blue collection box on East Carson Street. One addressed to the IRS whistleblower office in D.C., one to the FBI Pittsburgh Field Office Attention Economic Crimes Squad. No fingerprints, no DNA, no return address. Then I disappeared again. 61 days later, I was standing in the cereal aisle at the Giant Eagle on Cochrane Road when every phone in the store started buzzing at once. Mine first, KDKA breaking news alert. I opened it and nearly dropped the basket. Live chopper footage, a dozen unmarked SUVs and 2 Pittsburgh PD cruisers blocking the entrance to Walsh & Sons on Connor Road in Mount Lebanon. Agents in Navy windbreakers with yellow FBI letters poured out carrying battering rams and evidence boxes. Dad stood on the sidewalk in his gray company polo, hands zip-tied behind his back, staring at the ground while a female agent read him his rights. Within an hour, the U.S. attorney unsealed the 58-count indictment: wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, tax evasion, structuring the works. Estimated scheme value $12.4 million over 14 years. Every corporate account was frozen before noon. Civil forfeiture notices hit the courthouse docket at 12:07 p.m. Liens attached to the house, the cabin in Cook Forest, the boats, the timeshare in Hilton Head, even Mom's 2019 Odyssey. That same afternoon, 2 deputy U.S. Marshals taped a seizure notice to the front door of the Mount Lebanon house while Mom watched from the window in her bathrobe. Melanie's husband Ryan filed for divorce the following Monday morning at 8:02 a.m. I know the exact time because the filing went live on the Allegheny County Public Docket. He asked for emergency temporary sole custody, exclusive possession of the Upper St. Clair house, and a protective order keeping Melanie 500 feet away until further hearing. Grounds: imminent exposure to federal criminal prosecution and total insolvency. She was served 3 hours later at the Red Roof Inn off I-79 while the kids were at school. Mason sent one text time-stamped 2:14 a.m. the night of the raid. "You did this. You killed us all." I read it 17 times, thumb hovering over reply, then deleted the thread and blocked the number. The story dominated local news for weeks. Channel 11 ran drone footage of agents loading flatbed trucks with backhoes and excavators. The Post-Gazette put Dad's mugshot above the fold from Steel City skylines to federal indictment. Neighbors who once borrowed tools now crossed the street when Mom walked the dog. The country club mailed a certified letter terminating the membership for conduct detrimental to the club's reputation. Garden Club, Book Club, Church Auxiliary, every group Mom had belonged to since 1988, quietly removed her from the rosters. Dad posted the $2 million bond using the last undeveloped parcel the company owned off Route 8 in Butler County. The judge allowed home confinement with a GPS ankle monitor, but the house was already scheduled for sheriff's sale in 90 days. Melanie moved into a studio apartment above a dive bar on Potomac Avenue in Dormont. For a week, she posted tear-streaked TikToks blaming a jealous sibling and blood money, then scrubbed her entire online presence when strangers started showing up outside the bar yelling fraud. Mason threw his tools in the bed of his Silverado and drove east on I-76 at dawn. A mutual friend from high school told me he was sleeping on an air mattress in a Buddy's Row home in Fishtown, pulling night shifts at an Amazon warehouse near the airport. The family that once filled a 6-bedroom colonial now occupied separate corners of Allegheny County, like refugees. I watched from the second-floor window of a renovated row house in Lawrenceville I bought through a blind trust. I paid cash for everything else, used a prepaid phone registered to the LLC, and never parked in the same spot twice. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just felt the silence settle heavy and final. They had spent my entire life trying to take what Grandma protected with her last breath. Now the government was taking everything they had left, and I was finally truly free. The sentencing hearing took place in Courtroom 8B of the Joseph F. Weiss, Jr. Federal Courthouse downtown on a gray February morning. I sat in the very back row, hair dyed dark, wearing glasses I didn't need. Coat collar turned up. Nobody recognized me. Dad walked in wearing a navy suit that hung loose on him, now hands cuffed in front, flanked by 2 marshals. He had lost 30 pounds since the raid. When the judge asked if he wished to speak, he only shook his head. The prosecutor recited the final tally: $12.4 million laundered, $4.1 million in tax loss, 58 counts. The judge looked over his glasses and delivered the sentence: 96 months in federal prison, to be served at FCI Loretto, followed by 3 years, supervised release, restitution of $9.8 million, forfeiture of all remaining assets. The gavel fell. Dad never looked back at the gallery. Chapter 7 liquidation papers for Walsh & Sons Construction were filed the same week. The bankruptcy trustee auctioned everything: the last 3 excavators, the office furniture, even the framed photos of bridges Dad used to hang in the lobby. The Ment Lebanon house sold at sheriff's sale for pennies on the dollar to an investor who flipped it 6 months later. Mom and Melanie ended up in a 1-bedroom unit at Monolly Manor Apartments off Route 22 in Monroeville, 20 minutes east of the city. The complex sat behind a Sheetz and a Dollar Tree windows facing the turnpike. Mom took the bedroom. Melanie slept on a pull-out couch that smelled like old cigarettes. For months, Melanie cycled through burner numbers. First came the begging texts: "Courtney, please, the appeal lawyer needs another $15K retainer. I'm your sister, blood doesn't stop being blood." Then the tone shifted. "You'll burn in hell for this. I'm telling every reporter you paid the feds to destroy us. I know where you live, bitch. I blocked every new number the moment it appeared." The last one came from a 412 area code at 3:07 a.m. A single voice memo of her crying, calling me every name she could think of before the message cut off at 60 seconds. Mason moved permanently to Philadelphia. He got a job running inventory for a medical supply distributor in Northeast Philly and rented a studio near Frankfurt and Cottman. The only time we communicated was when he needed my signature on some old joint tax document the IRS still wanted. His emails were 3 lines long, no greeting, no sign-off. Never once mentioned Dad, Mom, Melanie, or the money. I kept my Lawrenceville row house, but I also bought a second property under a different LLC, a quiet brick duplex in Bloomfield, where nobody asked questions. I paid cash, parked in the alley, and learned to live without leaving a trail. Mom tried once. A handwritten letter forwarded through Cohen's office. 8 pages of Bible verses and underlined sentences about forgiveness and family, and what would Grandma Nora think? I read it once, folded it into a square, and dropped it in the fireplace. The prison visitor log at FCI Loretto stayed mostly empty. Dad got mail from a few old suppliers and one high school buddy who still believed he was framed. Mom visited twice a month, driving the 2.5 hours each way in a 2009 Corolla she bought off Craigslist. Melanie never went. She told the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review in an anonymous quote that some daughters destroy their fathers for sport. I read the article on my phone while drinking coffee on my back porch. I felt nothing. 11 months after the gavel, the appeals were exhausted, the assets were gone, and the people who once filled a 6-bedroom house with noise now lived in separate silences they had built themselves. I still had the trust. I still had Grandma's card in my wallet. I still had a life they would never touch again. The story was over for them. It had only just started for me. Snow started falling the moment I stepped out of the Uber at the entrance to Allegheny Cemetery. The same kind of wet, heavy flakes that had soaked me the night they locked the door. 18 months to the day. I walked the familiar path alone, boots crunching on the fresh layer until I reached the simple granite stone, Eleanor Nora Walsh, 1938, 2018, beloved grandmother. I knelt, brushed the snow from the base, and set down a small bouquet of white roses. The wind bit my cheeks, but I didn't feel cold anymore. Grandma had seen everything coming. She had watched her own son try to bleed her dry while she was still breathing. She had watched him teach his children that love came with a price tag, and instead of giving them another chance to steal, she built a wall of lawyers, judges, and ironclad paper that only I could walk through, because she knew I was the only one who never asked for a dime. I stood up and looked out over the hills of headstones toward the city skyline in the distance. In the past year and a half, I had quietly formed Walsh Housing Partners, LLC. Through a series of blind trusts and private placements, the company purchased 3 tired brick apartment buildings in East Liberty, and Garfield renovated them with union labor, and now rented clean, safe 2- and 3-bedroom units to single mothers at 30% below market rate. 78 families live there because Grandma's Amazon shares from 1997 kept growing while nobody was looking. The Eleanor N. Walsh Scholarship Fund, administered through the Pittsburgh Foundation, had already sent 42 kids from steelworker and service worker families to Pitt CMU and Community College of Allegheny County. Full ride. No loans. Every recipient got a handwritten letter on the same stationery Grandma used to use. Education is the one thing nobody can repossess. I still lived simply. A 2-bedroom condo in Bloomfield with hardwood floors and a tiny balcony that overlooks Liberty Avenue. One rescue mutt named Penny. Plants on every windowsill. I cooked dinner most nights, read actual books, and slept without nightmares for the first time in years. I no longer had a father serving 8 calendars in Loretto. I no longer had a mother sharing a 1-bedroom in Monroeville. I no longer had a sister who changed burner numbers like underwear. I kept Mason's email in my contacts because Grandma loved him once, and because some childhood memories are worth carrying even when the people in them are gone. We had exchanged exactly 27 work-related messages in 18 months. Not one personal word. That was fine. Freedom isn't loud. Freedom is waking up on a Saturday and realizing nobody on earth expects you to justify how you spend your money, your time, or your heart. Freedom is giving away millions, not because someone guilted you, but because you finally can. Freedom is standing in the snow at your grandmother's grave and knowing without a shred of doubt that you honored the only person who ever chose you without conditions. I brushed the last flakes from the stone and spoke to her the way I always do when nobody's listening. I kept the promise, Grandma. I kept it safe. and then I gave it away to people who actually need it. Just like you taught me. The wind carried my words across the empty rows of graves. I turned and walked back down the hill. Behind me, the snow kept falling, covering every footprint I left. Ahead of me, the city lights flickered on one by one. To everyone watching this story, here's what I learned the hard way. Family is not a blood contract that entitles anyone to own you. Love is not a debt you owe forever because someone fed and clothed you as a child. And money, real money, only reveals who people already were. If the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally lock the door when you have nothing, believe them the first time. Cut the rope. Walk away. Build the life they said you didn't deserve. Because the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's survival. It's kindness on your own terms. It's becoming the safe place you never had for someone else. Grandma Nora knew that. Now I do too. And I have never been happier.